I know a predator when I see one.
Hi, this is Seema Mehta, a political reporter from the Los Angeles Times, and I'm here after the third night of the Democratic National Convention. Tonight was quite a remarkable night. The list of speakers was unlike many you see, from former President Barack Obama to 2016 Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, Senator Elizabeth Warren, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. It was a very star-studded night. One of the most remarkable things about tonight was former President Obama's remarks, because he has criticized President Trump's policies since leaving office, but he has not largely criticized him by name. Tonight was completely different. He had a full-throated offense against President Trump.
For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends.
Former President Obama was arguing that President Trump was basically incapable of the job.
This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win. So we have to get busy building it up.
If another Republican had been nominated in 2016 and become the president, for example, a Jeb Bush or a Marco Rubio, there would be differences about policy. They would differ about tax policy, immigration, education. But this was something more fundamentally different, which I don't think we've really heard as much in the past.
Because what we do these next 76 days will echo through generations to come.
The 2016 Democratic nominee, Hillary Clinton, also spoke tonight. Her message was very interesting because she spoke initially about how she sort of hoped after she lost that President Trump would be able to grow into the role. But like President Obama and like Senator Warren and like former First Lady Michelle Obama, she also ended up centering her message on the idea that the president is not personally capable of doing so.
I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now.
Hillary Clinton also spoke about the importance of voting.
Joe and Kamala can win by 3 million votes and still lose. Take it from me. So we need numbers overwhelming so Trump can't sneak or steal his way to victory.
And she was using that to really try to urge Democrats, even if you think we've had this in the bag, you have to get out there and vote. And if you look at the polling, the polling right now looks good for Democrats, but the polling at this point 4 years ago also looked good for Democrats. So I think she, as well as other speakers tonight and throughout the whole convention, have really made a point of saying, don't get comfortable. You have to get out and vote.
I accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States of America.
The final speaker of the night was California's Senator Kamala Harris, and this was sort of a history-making speech. It was perhaps the biggest speech of her life as she accepted the nomination to be the vice presidential running mate for Joe Biden. She's the first woman of color on a major party ticket. She's the first African-American, first Asian-American, first Indian-American, and there's a lot of firsts in there. So there was a lot of history sort of like riding on her shoulders, and I think they tried to introduce her in a way that sort of explain some of this, because I think if you're a political insider, you know about her. If you're a Californian, you know about her. But if you're an average American voter, she ran for president last year, but she dropped out long before the first ballots were cast. So I don't know how well known she is across the broader American, landscape. And they really, talked about her family, her mom, who immigrated from India.
My mother taught me that service to others gives life purpose and meaning. And oh, how I wish she were here tonight, but I know she's looking down on me from above.
Her father, who was a Jamaican immigrant, and how they met, and her, seeing the civil rights movement as they marched in it, and then, how her parents split, and being raised by a single mom, and her experiences. It really was meant to be an introduction to the country about the family that she came from. They also talked about her relationship with her husband, Doug, who she married a couple years ago, and his kids, and how she's the stepmom, but they don't call her stepmom, they call her Mamala, and sort of their relationship. So it was sort of a little view into the personal side of her, which we don't really get a lot of, we don't really see a lot of. And it was also, she portrayed herself as almost like a happy warrior. I think you see two different Kamala Harrises if you've known her for a while. When she's greeting voters, when she's talking to children, when she's talking like in an aside, she's very funny, she's very charming. But at times, when she's on the stump, she can be, the prosecutor who she is, as the former AG, as the former DA, very aggressive, very strong in making her points.
And let's be clear, there is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do the work.
And it was a weird setting for her. She was speaking from basically an empty convention center in Delaware. There's a handful of people there, some reporters, some photographers, but it was not typical. So that was a little bit of a weird setting, and that sort of came into play at the end where, she's out there waving to the crowd, which there is no crowd. There is a camera and the teleprompter and a couple of reporters. And then Joe Biden comes out and they stay 6 feet apart from each other and sort of wave at each other. And then the spouses come out, and then each spouse, goes with their respective maid, and then they all again wave to a non-existent crowd. But this is sort of campaigning in the time of COVID, which is unlike anything we've ever seen before. Another thing that was remarkable tonight, which I also think we've seen this throughout the convention, but I felt like I've seen it more tonight than any night before, was just how much the convention has been dominated by women, and in particular women of color. From the MCs, tonight was Kerry Washington. Earlier this week we saw Eva Longoria, or we also saw Tracee Ellis Ross. Politicians, the elected leaders who spoke tonight was Hillary Clinton, obviously, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Gabrielle Giffords. I mean, there was a real emphasis on women. There was a segment about suffrage and women's right to vote, and I think part of it is it's part of the message that Democrats are trying to blast out, that they're the inclusive party, they're the party for everybody. But also, it also reflects how important these voters are to their chances in 2020, both women and people of color. Because if they do not have a high turnout from both of these groups, it's hard to see how Democrats are successful. Politics aside, there was a really emotional theme throughout tonight's speakers and throughout the videos and the proceedings tonight. The elected officials, obviously those speeches were interesting, but I felt like some of the most interesting speeches came from people who are not elected leaders. From a mom whose son was shot in the head and is now paraplegic, living in a 24-care facility. The 11-year-old daughter of a Marine whose wife was deported. So there was a really emotional undercurrent through so much of tonight's proceedings that had nothing to do with the elected leaders, but really had to do with real people who aren't involved in politics, speaking their minds, talking about how the Trump administration's policies have impacted them. And that included actually Gabby Giffords, who, she is an elected official, but she was shot in the head in an assassination attempt in 2011 in Tucson at a constituent event. And she also spoke about gun violence. They showed her sort of walking with a cane and then, playing a French horn, playing My Country 'Tis of Thee, and then struggling to speak. And she spoke about her rehabilitation and how difficult it was for her to relearn how to speak.
I found one word and then I found another. My recovery is a daily fight, but fighting makes me stronger.
So that wraps up the third night of the Democratic National Convention. We have one more night, tomorrow night, and we will be seeing Joe Biden make his address to the nation, arguably the most important speech he's ever made in his long, long political life.